Start your recording.
Okay, hello. Hello. This is the new class on Christ and culture, and I talked with Will about this before Will left, and this is a very well-known book by H. Richard Niebuhr, who was one of the, along with his brother, leading theologians in the United States in the 20th century. And Will was excited about getting a class. We're going to spend 5 weeks on this class. This is not a controversial book. It's simply a way of looking at what are 5 basic ways that we can respond to our surrounding culture. So it doesn't have an axe to grind. It doesn't push a political position, so don't worry about that. It's just a way to organize what we've got. And I'd like to start with a short prayer, and then we'll get going. Lord, we pray for this class. Thank you for everyone who was here and those who were on the Zoom. We pray that as we look at what Niebuhr has to say about dealing with culture, that we may get some good suggestions, helpful hints on how to react to what's going on around us in the public square. Bless these 5 weeks. Amen. One of the things I like to do on Tuesday is watch the lectionary call-in podcast. And we have one of the 3 stars of that show right behind Paul. See, if you sit in this line, you speak. Sit in this line, you speak. And one of the things that I really appreciated about this past Tuesday is when Bill talked about the root of the word politics and politician. And I thought that was very helpful, and it's a good introduction to what we're doing here. So where does the word politics come from, and what does it mean? Straighten us out.
Right. Well, I don't know about straightening it out. A quick backstory will add to this.
Yeah.
I heard this when I went to the Monastery of the Holy Spirit south of Atlanta from a monk. They're, I believe they're Benedictine monks, who are an example of the first concept. So hearing what I'm about to say from one who has retreated from the world is helpful. Politics comes from, our English word politics comes from the Greek word polis, which means city or village or an identified community. And politics means managing the life of the village or the city. And the monk's purpose point was, we are all political. Even in a monastery, we have a village. We are managing our lives. And spending a week there, I got some of the nuances of some of the tensions that they had. But that was helpful to me, that in that sense, all we do is political, because it has to do with managing. Right now, we're a village in this room, and we have a leader, a manager.
Thank you, Bill. And just if you don't listen to this podcast on Tuesdays, I recommend it. It is really good, and Don Upton is also there, and the chair is going to be teaching a class on the lectionary, right?
Yeah.
After this one.
Right.
Now, if you talk about politics as Bill mentioned in the original word, many people say that our democratic system or some of the ideals for our democracy comes from Athens in Greece. I know Helen on the way down here was telling me what it was like to be there a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm not trying not to be jealous. I'm just drinking my coffee. First it was Barcelona, now Athens. And but for us, growing up here in the Western world, we look to Greece and Athens and much of the Greek language as giving us the basis for how do we talk about self-government? How do we talk about human rights? How do we talk about managing this? Now, let me give you an illustration. And this came This was on my driveway. Helen's laughing. This was on my driveway this morning. And so I'm going to show you what's on the front page of the Tampa Bay Times and the New York Times. This is today. I'm not making this up. This is God answering prayer. What is politica? What is polls? Okay. Front page of the Tampa Bay Times today. The urban problem of heat and the lack of trees. Okay. Front page of our city's newspaper. All right. So we need to have political leaders, as Bill said, wrestle with this problem and hopefully come up with a solution. That is politics in its root meaning in the best sense of the word, not yelling back and forth and backstabbing, saying, hey, what's the problem? How do we solve it? Right? Now, this is the front page of the New York Times. I'm not making this up. This is really what's happening today. On the front page is the story of how cities all over Europe are getting together and planting what they call small forests. On the size of a basketball court, you can start a small forest. There are certain trees that grow there. It doesn't have to be big. It's just in multiple areas. And right away, it starts to affect the air that's breathed and the climate in the neighborhoods. So it's an easy solution. It's an inexpensive solution. And some of our relatives, some of you family came from Europe, Northern Europe, and from myself in the Netherlands. They're miles ahead of us on this. But what they're doing, this is an illustration of what Bill said. Here's the problem. You've got tremendous heat, especially in urban areas with lots of concrete and a few trees. How do we solve this problem? Because people are literally dying because of heat. Well, same day, front page, here are politicians working together across the Atlantic saying, okay, what can we do in Paris? What can we do in Amsterdam? What can we do in Berlin? How can we solve this problem? Okay, let's buy a land, doesn't have to be big, the size of this room here, and we can plant a new forest. And right away, it'll start to affect the level of carbon and the emissions, and will offer shade. And imagine in 10, 15 years, when those trees are fully grown, the temperature will go down in those neighborhoods. So just an illustration, and this happens today on the front page of these two newspapers. So I thank the Lord. Lord, thank you for answering my prayer. If there's something to follow what Bill says, I'm going to bring it. So this is it right here.
Bob, can I offer another one from this morning? I turned on Channel 9 to check on the storm. What followed was the story of the shooting in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah.
The racist. You know what followed that? The gun show in Tampa.
Yes.
And the increase in sales, and that more women are buying guns.
Yeah.
And it just made my blood run cold. It was illustrating how are we managing ourselves in Florida. Are being managed.
Where are the managers? Where are the managers? If in Paris, they can figure out, okay, how do we solve the heat problem in this city? Well, let's buy up some basketball courts. And instead of making pickleball, let's plant trees.
Oh,
wait a minute.
Wait. Cross the line there.
Yeah. So, last Saturday, Helen and I went with our son and our three granddaughters, I think most of you have met them, to the Lego show at the Florida Fairgrounds. And there's a big building, and they had a Lego show, and the place was packed out. Right next to it was the Florida Gun Show. So all these little kids with their moms and dads going to the Lego show, you know, and this is kind of a fun family event, and they loved it. And next door was.
It was advertised.
Yeah, it's just something else. It's just a different feel, I guess, a feel to it. And I thought, well, I'm glad I'm here with my grandkids at Legoland, you know, for me. Now, you all have the handouts, right? From Diane?
Yep.
Every week, we're going to be having a handout. And that will be available to you online. Diane sends them out, I think on Thursday, John, right?
Thursday and Sunday morning.
Yeah, Sunday morning and Thursday, so you will have all 5 weeks, you will have every week a handout. I recommend that you actually buy the book. This is the 50th anniversary edition of the book. It's not a big book, it's readable, it's a classic. It's available on Amazon. You can get used books for a couple of dollars. You get it, and it'll be there the next day. So I would recommend, and here, this is the ISBN number. You'll have, look at the back page, look at the back page. Yeah, this is the top book. If you don't have the book, that's okay, because you will get a summary every week. There will be a handout, which you will get on email Thursday and Sunday morning. But I would recommend, buy used ones, spend a couple bucks, you'll have it the next day, and then you've got it right here. Now, I want to just look at some of the resources here that we've got. Not everyone agrees, surprise, surprise, with Reinhold Niebuhr. Not everyone agrees with him. This is the other point of view. This is the other point of view. This is Christ and Culture Revisited, right here. This put it politely, this is a more conservative point of view, where he reads Niebuhr and says that Niebuhr is trapped in the 20th century. Well, I was born in the 20th century, so for me, that's not a bad thing. I like the 20th century. But this is the other side. If you're really into the issue of, well, what's going on with Christ and culture and all of that, you could, I guess, read them both. But this is the other side. And again, the ISBN number is right there. You could order it from Amazon. I just find that the fastest, cheapest way to get books. It's on Amazon. And then a new book that's come out. I really, this one here is from Princeton University Press. Some of you may like it. Some of you who may have gone to seminary or college and had religious studies, this is really, really a good book. This is by Michael Lamb, ISBN number right there, A Commonwealth of Hope. This, I wouldn't recommend it if you're not motivated to read like 400 pages of theological stuff with a lot of Latin and Greek in it. But if you're into that, Bill, if you're into that, this is worth the investment. This is a revisitation of St. Augustine. He's the one who wrote The City of God. And St. Augustine is the one that really started a Christian understanding of what I call the public square. What happens when Romans, pagans, Christians, Jews meet together in the public square, which in Rome was literally the marketplace. And we say the marketplace of ideas. Well, literally, that's what it was. And so he's looking again, a new perspective on Augustine and lifting up a message of hope that now, in our times, with all of the divisiveness, what we need is an understanding of the public square in terms of hope. And he argues that the theme of the New Testament is not just love, God is love, but God is hope. God is hope. And this, I really like this book. John, you know this book? Yeah, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. And then, that's from Princeton, now from Yale. Here we go. This is Luke Timothy Johnson, Among the Gentiles. Among the Gentiles. This book looks at how Christians in the first centuries came up with their ideas of what does it mean to live in Rome, the Roman Empire. And if you look at, on the first page, ways of being religious, okay? Ways of being religious. I thought this was really good, so I just wanted to write it down. Ways of being religious. This is Luke Timothy Johnson, and he summarizes it. I think this is helpful for us. He says, with the pagan culture, the first half of his book are what do the pagan writers see as the advantage of religion? Because the Romans and the Greeks were very religious. They were very religious people. These were not atheists. These were very religious people. And so this is what he says. The first is a participation in divine benefits. You want health. You want riches. You want a good family. You want benefits. If you join a cult, you want to be blessed by the source of that cult. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is moral transformation. And this is very common in the Greek and Roman world, where you had ethical teachers like the Stoics and others would literally go around just like Jesus did. They would go city to city to city with their disciples, and they would talk about how do you live a good life? How do you live a good life? And they left their writings, and many people feel that what we have in the New Testament shows the impact of some of those pagan writers. Okay, so that's the second one, moral transformation. Now the third one, again, in this book here, is transcending the world. The world is a terrible place. It's an awful place. There's a heaven somewhere, and we want to transcend and get out of this awful, terrible world. And there were many Romans and Greeks who thought that. And so you wanted to, they had levels of heaven, and you wanted to go increasingly upward, not downward, but upward, to get toward the highest heavens. And again, you can see the Christians kind of took that idea over, and especially in the monasteries where people withdrew from the cities and went into the desert, their goal was to become more and more godlike. Okay? And then finally, what he says here is stabilizing the world. This one to me is a little bit more complicated. In the Roman Empire, the main thing that the authorities wanted was stability. They didn't care what you believed. It's just that you honored the emperor and you paid your taxes. That's what they wanted. And if you did that, you were stable. And then the empire could survive and expand. The Christians only got in trouble when they said the emperor isn't God and we're not going to bow down to him. Well, you can't do that in the Roman Empire. I mean, they will literally throw you to the lions. So that's why the Christians were persecuted there. So stabilizing the world for our writer here, Johnson, the thing was hopefully this is a benefit. More and more people who start to follow whoever God is, I mean, if you're Christian or Jewish or pagan, then the crime will go down, the violence will go down, people will be faithful soldiers in the Roman legions, all those good things, they'll pay their taxes, there'll be a stability there. So I think it's just really, to me, very interesting presentation, and to see that our understanding as Christians is not isolated. It just didn't come out of the blue, but we were affected. It's a two-way street with the Greeks and the Romans. It's a two-way street, and out of that comes Christianity. Okay, I just wanted to share these things. Now let's look at the first page here. Is this class relevant? hope so. I hope so. I really like, Bill, I'm so glad you showed up, because I said to Helen on the way down here, I need Bill to explain what politics means in Greek. So when you came in that door, I thought, oh, good. It's a problem solving. It should be problem solving. I don't know how many of you get Time Magazine. This is kind of on a popular level. Anybody get Time Magazine? Okay, well, this is kind of on a popular level. You know, you don't need to be a college graduate or a grad student to read Time Magazine. This is for the average American can read Time Magazine. This just arrived at our house. This is this week's Time Magazine. And it looks at the mess that our political world is in the USA today. Okay? And I think mess is a correct four-letter word. You know, that's a nice four-letter word. The mess that we have. So it's relevant. If you go to the airport and you go by the bookshops in the airport, this is the Time Magazine that will be on the counter for the next 7 days, right here. Okay? Now, the next level up, if we're looking at what I would call more of a professional journal, is the Atlantic. I don't know how many of you read the Atlantic. I know Chuck Jones reads the Atlantic. But this is the Atlantic, and I've referred to two articles here. The first one is by Tim Alberta, How Politics Poisoned the Church, all right? That's at the top of the handout. Right here is the June 2022 issue. My home state of Michigan, there is a church called the Floodgate Church in just outside of Detroit that defied the order of the governor and refused to close during COVID. It caused a huge stir in my home state of Michigan because they basically said, we're going to meet, we're going to celebrate Jesus, and you can't stop us. And the church exploded in membership. And this is the story. One of the writers of the Atlantic went there to interview the pastor. The name of the church is right here. It's the Floodgate Church in Brighton, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And if you want to get a feel of what's going on in kind of this combative, what I would say, white Christian nationalism, very aggressive, threats of violence, this is a good article on that. Again, you can get it online. Just type in the author, type in the name of the article, and you'll have it. So this sort of shows what we're living through right now on a more detailed study. And finally, this is, to me, the scariest one of them all. This just came out last week. This is every week there's an online Atlantic article. You don't need to have a subscription. You don't have to get the magazine. Once a week, they will send you a link online. And this was last week's article, the link. And the woman who bought a mountain for God. This is the woman, Tammy Barthen. And north of Pittsburgh, she bought an entire mountain to have a Christian training site for the upcoming Civil War. So she could train Christians in how to shoot guns, how to battle us. And the author went there, Stephanie McCrumman went there, and on the sheet here is the name of the article and the author. Again, you can type it in on the internet and it'll download. This is the group that's preparing for the Civil War, and General Michael Flynn is part of this group. Michael Flynn, remember Michael Flynn? He goes around the country encouraging people to get ready for the upcoming Civil War. Okay, Michael, that's the same group. That's what this is. The name of the group, it is the fastest growing Christian group in America. Okay, it is called officially the New Apostolic Reformation. The New Apostolic Reformation. This scared me. I read it, it scared me. Because this is the fastest growing group. Not the Baptists, not the Presbyterian, not the Roman Catholics, but the New Apostolic Reformation group. and they're getting ready for a civil war against bad guys, us. We're the bad guys.
I tell you something, I know Stephanie Crumman, and her uncle is a Presbyterian minister.
Good. So I'm glad you said that. It's a very well-written article. She actually goes to this training site just north of Pittsburgh. And, talks to it, takes pictures of it, and this is the lady that bought it. And it scared me when I read it. I thought, oh my God, is this true? But, I'm glad now the author has credibility. So again, if you've got the nerve, if you've got the courage, you read this to find out what's really going on, sadly, in my opinion, going on with the fellow Christians and Americans, which, in my opinion, are misled about what Jesus teaches and what are our obligations to our fellow citizens and fellow believers. I don't think, my opinion, I don't think this is correct. But it shows the largest growing Christian group in America. That's these guys. So, questions? Just wanted to run through some of this stuff. Questions? By the way, thank you about the author. I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you.
Robert, we are,
Robert?
our theological book reading group that Paul and I are part of, we're reading Jesus and John Wayne.
Yeah.
And it does mention about the white Christian evangelical churches that said shutting down for COVID is what wimps do. Real men go to daily shutdown.
Muscular Christianity.
That's like our governor when in Florida, where he refused to shut down the churches and businesses. Yeah. Yeah, Robert, there's some stuff going on that, my opinion, I disagree with. And I grew up in Ottawa County, Michigan, which is now under the control of white Christian nationalists. It saddens me. I read about it in the local newspapers, and I disagree with what they're doing on the school board, on the city council, the people they're firing who are losing their jobs. I just think this is not, I don't think Jesus would do that if he was here today. My opinion. I don't, that's not the Jesus that I know in the Bible. So I think it behooves us to read books like that and to become informed. What is the public square? What should we be involved in the public square? Because this has been over 2,000 years. This is not new. My word, when Christians started going across the empire, and people were saying, "Who are these people?" I mean, the problem starts right there. Do we throw them to the lions, or do we just let them be, or what do we do? And so we've been dealing with this for 2,000 years. And that's where I think, in my opinion, Robert, this book to me has been so helpful. This is my third time reading it. You can see it's kind of worn out, but this book is so helpful. Well, what are the options? I mean, if I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, if I believe in the Bible, what are the realistic options that I can choose to be a Christian and faithful to my God and faithful to the Bible in today's public square? And that's what I hope we're going to talk about for the next 5 weeks. So, but thanks for sharing that. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Rob,
Yeah.
I think the first thing you need to do when you talk about this is they tend to tag the people that are kind of doing this, called evangelical. So the first question that usually comes up is, well, what's an evangelical?
Yep.
What defines them? So in Jesus and John Wayne, I've started to make a list. And perhaps I'd like some help with Professor Wayne, what are the attributes of an evangelical Christian? So the first thing you get is they're very fundamental. That's what everybody used to think they were. Fundamental, they believe in Jesus. All the good things, actually. the infallibility of the Bible, etc. Then it goes past there if you want to try and define what these groups are like. That's, I wouldn't say these guys are fundamentalists. They're more than that. And you have to go and say, okay, they're militaristic. That makes some sense. And they have a tendency to violence. Now you're starting to define what you're talking about. And as you run down, I didn't bring the list, I've got about 8 attributes.
But you know, they can show examples. What happened to Jericho?
Well, that's Old Testament, yeah.
What happened to the money changers in the temple? And who did that to them?
We actually.
No, I mean, there is an argument, yeah.
Another book that some people were uncomfortable with, theology that we have, it's called God, a Biography. And it was God looked at as a character. That's what you have to kind of remove yourself, because we know what we think God is, what we believe He is. He knows everything, et cetera, et cetera. This guy that took it and looked at him as a character, he addressed some of that. It was all the Hebrew Bible, it was all Old Testament. Didn't even get to Jesus. That wasn't the purpose. And if you read those stories, what would you see God as a character? And that was not, a lot of people didn't like what.
Yeah, this is really relevant. I mean, what's in this book, it's like it was written for today. You know, we're in the public square. A member of our church is a member of Congress. She usually sits 4 pews in front of me at 11:30 service, a member of Congress. So we are involved in the public square, this church, PCPC. And so we have a number of our members who are leaders in the community. I think that's a good thing. I don't think we should pull away from it. I think that's a good thing. But how there are differences of opinion, like Martin said, on what's our objective. When we're in the public square, what's our objective? Do you say, like the planting of the trees, what good can we do? Or do you say, like in Michigan, who do we fire first? I mean, that's the choice. Who do we fire first, or what good can we do? Yeah.
Split throats. That's
Right.
Saves ammunition.
Yeah, it's, yeah. Yep. Let's take a look at this right here. Thank you for the comments. Those are good. I already talked about the relevance, and again, if you want to get deeper into this, I recommend the 2 articles in the Atlantic. They're very good, and the Atlantic is a very good authority. If you're quoting the Atlantic, you're quoting the gold standard up there, the gold standard. Luke Timothy Johnson, he's one of my favorite authors. He gives a good view on why are people religious. You know, why are they religious? Well, he said, okay, there's 4 main reasons for that, and they're all valid. They're all valid. Now, Niebuhr's classic book, which is this right here again, you can get a used copy for a couple of bucks. On Amazon, you get it the next day. Niebuhr taught Christian ethics at Yale Divinity School for over 30 years. He was born in 1894, passed away in 1962. He was the younger brother of Reinhold Niebuhr, who taught practical theology at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. The Niebuhrs were part of the German Reformed Church and later the United Church of Christ. Just a little bit of background on who the Niebuhrs are. His brother Richard was on the cover of Time magazine about 70 years ago. And I have a copy of that. And he was considered America's preeminent theologian after World War II. He was like our Cold War American theologian who interpreted the use of violence in the Cold War. That's Niebuhr. That's Richard Niebuhr, his brother. He's the one who taught Dietrich Bonhoeffer at Union Seminary. And so where did Bonhoeffer get a lot of his ideas? From Niebuhr, the older brother of this guy here. So it's a very, my opinion, two very significant brothers in the 20th century, with their influence, not just in our country, but in Germany, their resistance to Hitler, and around the world, and even today, their influence today. Now, this is the book right here. This is the 50th anniversary edition, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. The original book was published in 1951, the year I was born. This is a gift. I didn't get this as a present when I was born, though. 1951 is my birthday. In the foreword of the 50th anniversary edition, Martin Marty writes, H. Richard Niebuhr's Christ and Culture is a classic. A classic is a work of genius that a later culture must take into account once that work has had a chance to leave its marks. I agree with that. There are people who would disagree with me, like this guy. He would disagree with me, but that's okay. That's okay. We live in a free country, and we're both in the public square. We can both express ourselves in the public square. I think this is a classic. It's well worth reading, and I hope in the next 5 weeks we'll get an idea of what is a helpful biblical way to engage with our fellow citizens. People that agree with us or people who disagree with us. How can that be helpful? Here's a quote from Carson. He critiques the book and offers this observation. Even though Niebuhr's Christ and Culture is more than 50 years old, it is difficult, at least in the English-speaking world, to ignore him. That's a compliment. Carson then spends over 200 pages interpreting Niebuhr's book for the 21st century. It's a nice way of saying he criticizes it. And that's what you do when you're a professor. You compliment somebody. Oh, thank you for the research you've done. I really enjoyed reading it. Now let me tell you where you made your mistakes. You know, so he spent 200 pages telling where Niebuhr is wrong. And what is the purpose? I like this right here. It is the purpose of the following chapters to set forth typical Christian answers to the problem of Christ and culture, and so contribute to the mutual understanding of varied and often conflicting Christian groups. Sounds like that was translated from German, but that's what Niebuhr says. He wants to help people deal with this. Now, one of the things that I really think, let's take a look at it. We have a time. There's just so much in this book. Being a good theologian, he first defines the terms. What a good writer always says, you got to define the terms. Who is Christ? Who's Christ? Okay, he has a whole section here on who is Christ, the fact remains that the Christ who exercised authority over Christians, or who Christians accept as authority, is the Jesus Christ of the New Testament, and that this is a person with definite teachings, a definite character, and a definite faith. It's very interesting, his chapter on which Christ is he referring to, on Christ and culture, because there are different images of Christ, depending on your point of view. There is a Marxist view of Christ, that Christ is for the poor, period. And that's a very Marxist understanding, and kind of a class conflict, class struggle understanding of Christ. Okay, and you can pick out verses to prove that if you want to. So, okay, well, Jesus said this, Jesus said that. There is a fundamentalist view of Christ, where you see Christ is very judgmental and very punishing, and you can find verses that prove that, you know. And so there are different ways you can understand Christ. And again, this is a very, very well-written section where he says, all I can say is that I am talking about the Christ that we find in the New Testament. With all of the twists and turns, this is the Christ that I'm going to talk about in this book. Now, I would recommend, if this is a Bible that you would be reading in seminary or college. This is the Bible that they would recommend if you went to like Davidson College, which is a Presbyterian college, or Eckerd College. This would be in the bookstore, and I would recommend this. This is the best, I think, Bible available in terms of being accurate, historical, sound, helpful, footnotes on every page. And so you were saying, yeah, I'm going to see what the New Testament says about this Jesus. It's not perfect. There may be some errors and maybe some traditions lost, but generally, what do I learn about Jesus from the New Testament? That's what I'm going to follow in my book. So, again, this is my plug. Did you use this in seminary, John? Look at that. I didn't even know that. He said, yes, good.
And Bob, I think it's helpful to know that he says toward a definition of Christ, toward the definition of culture. He would emphasize that none of us have the definition.
Correct. That's what I said. With all of the imperfections, this is what he goes with. He's not an absolutist.
Right.
You know. So now, culture. This is something that I want to just talk about. Now, John, what time are we ending? Just so I know.
10:50. So you got 6 minutes.
Oh, 6 minutes. Okay. There are 7. I didn't include it in here. I should have. But there are 7 aspects of culture that he talks about, and this is pages 32 through 39 in the book. And this is really, really good. He first decides, well, which Christ am I talking about? The Christ in the New Testament, okay? Now, which culture am I talking about? And he says culture is composed of 7 things. Let me read them, and if you have the book, and I can put this in the handout next week. The first one is that culture is always social. It's always social. It always involves human beings. Social. 2, culture is always a human achievement. It's not disorganized rubble, but it's a human achievement. Someone built the pyramid. Okay, they achieved something. These people got together, organized, and built that pyramid. Number 3, it is a world of values. Why did the Egyptians build that pyramid? What was behind that? So there's got to be a value behind it that we can find. And the number 4, it is concerned about the good, capital G, the good for humans. Now, what do you mean by the good? That's where people fight wars and argue all the time. Well, what is the good? And Niebuhr says that for a culture, there has to be some central idea of the good. Well, it must benefit the society, the citizens, the families, all of that. Then number 5, it's got to have some kind of a temporal, you can see it, you can touch it, and material realization of values. That not enough just to have a value, but you've got to be able to touch it and see it. If you value the Egyptian gods, okay, then you put that into action by building the pyramids. So you can see the value in the pyramids. And then number 6 is you've got to conserve the values. Conservation of the values. There's got to be some way, usually through elders or education, that the central values are passed on. So those are the first six. Now, the last one is the one I think is most important. Niebuhr says, this is 1951, that a culture must respect pluralism and have tolerable conflict. I'm going to end by reading this from his book here. He says, these societies, cultures, are always involved, more or less, in effort to hold together in tolerable conflict. I underline that. The many efforts of people in different groups to achieve and conserve the good. I just think that is a gem for today. A culture, those in the culture do not always have the same view. And that's okay. That's okay. The culture has to figure out a way to have what Niebuhr says, tolerable conflict that allows for pluralism. That is on page 38 of the book. If you're going to order the book, go to 38, take your pen and underline that. You must allow for pluralism and have tolerable conflict, or else you're in fascist Germany. You know, in fascist Germany, there was no discussion. Those were the concentration camps. You were sent off to the camps for re-education, and you never came back. And so Niebuhr says, no, in a culture, you have to accept the fact of a pluralistic idea. Okay? And you have to find a way to have a communication without conflict. Okay, so how do we build the trees? How do we make these small forests? Okay, let's get the community leaders together, focus on the value of not having people die of heat stroke, of lowering the temperature in these cities, and let's find a way to talk about different ways of doing it. Maybe someone says, let's just have big fans on the corner. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. It's silly to me. But you have the freedom to say that. I mean, you can say, I want to go out and buy a big fan. Somebody says, no. Wouldn't it be smarter to do what the Europeans are doing? Let's just find places like, oh, hey, this is a basketball court, and plant trees. It's a simple solution. And people can argue about it, and in the end, figure out, okay, well, which one of these possibilities will work for our community? That is what Bill's talking about, the managing of the polis, the managing of the community, that hopefully you have men and women leaders who have developed the ability to have tolerable conflict. And I would suggest that's our problem today. We do not have people as leaders who have tolerable conflict. We've got to end right now. You want this list of values next week? I just think this, I should have put it on as really.
That's what we're boiling down to. I think we need to discuss that. We're driving all this through a culture.
Oh, yeah, I agree, Mark.
I'm not gonna argue what Jesus did for people on that issue. We're gonna lose that one.
Let's just say a quick prayer. God, thank you for people like H. Richard Niebuhr, who 50 years ago, really out of his own struggles and prayers and Bible study, came up with a way of looking at how we operate in the public square, how we can have pluralism and yet have a conflict be tolerable, how we can respect each other. We pray that in these 5 weeks, we may get the values that the Bible teaches, the analysis coming from Niebuhr, and really have a better perspective on how we can live in the American public square today. Amen. Thanks for coming. Did everyone sign up? Everyone sign up? Ellen's got a sign up thing. That way, it's still be here. We can get all of you by email.